Hi, guys. Welcome to today's episode of the uh, ACT Real Estate Training. I'm your host, Sam Perrin, and I'm going to be covering the most important aspect of any real estate business, and that is finding a customer who's going to pay all those bills and a tenant. And I'm going to walk you through my vetting process, and you can adapt it for your own market. So the first step, I'll just share my entire screen. There we go. So I use this flow chart. I'm going to try and keep this video brief because I'll make the flow chart available for you. But this is what what I give my staff, and it's color coded based on who has what responsibility. But you can easily do this all yourself. So let's say you've got an empty suite, or you have a tenant that gives notice. This is applicable to my jurisdiction, the laws that are here and in British Columbia, and the tenant has to give notice in a specific way. So if they send you a text, that doesn't count as written notice, and it needs to be 1 full month. That means that if they want to move out at the end of a particular month, they need to give notice before the 1st. So sometimes tenants will message you on the 2nd or the 3rd of the month and say, I'm gone at the end of this month, thinking that's appropriate notice, or they'll call you and they need to do it properly in writing. Otherwise, they haven't given you proper notice and they still owe you that extra month rent. So there should be links here that you can click and open, and it'll take you to, different letters that you can use in your correspondence, different templates. Once they've given you notice, you've established this proper notice. Even if it isn't, you want to prepare for that vacancy. So you want to open the file, look at the tenancy information. Do they owe you money for damages? You can click on each one of these links. Some of them are dated, but you're going to have some guides on how to take photos for move-in, move-out inspections. So all of these links in the PDF in the course handouts are going to be clickable, and you'll be able to download all these different links and forms. So you want to get ahead of this, and ideally, if you can do this in your business, one tenant will be moving out at the end of the month, and then the next tenant's moving in at noon on the 1st, so that you don't have a lapse in revenue for that particular month. But a lot of times, property management companies, especially, there's a month where you're vacant in between tenants, and that's usually if things are going pretty well in their office, but just as far as the turnaround goes for cleaning or any repairs that need to happen, they're not trying to make. If you're trying to run this efficiently, you're going to be asking the tenant who's moving out what's wrong, and going in there and giving them notice and doing the repairs while they're still living in there during that final month. But it takes coordination to be able to do that, either with your staff or with yourself doing it, fixing leaky taps or whatever the case may be, or hiring a plumber or whatever other contractor is in your Rolodex. So you want to see the property in person right away. There's a 24-hour notice form. You want to provide the tenant with the move-out forms, and one of the most important ones is the tenant move-out checklist, and that basically says the condition that you expect to receive the unit back, and there's a cleaning fee associated if it's not in that same condition. Any personal possessions need to be moved out, all this kind of stuff. And there's other forms you may need in your jurisdiction. For instance, in Alberta, you're going to want to have them sign a form where you're allowed to talk to the utility company to make sure that utility bill has been paid before you let them go and give them their security deposit back. Then you're going to talk to them. Why are you moving? And do, you can do this. There's potentially there's another unit you have. Oh, I just, I met somebody, we're moving in together, but we need a 3-bedroom place because, now we need an office and two bedrooms. So, and then maybe you happen to have a 3-bedroom place and they're a good tenant and you can work out a deal and fill another unit. So, or maybe there's something wrong with the unit that you can easily fix and they would stay. Next step, inspect the property, use a checklist and make a list of any work that needs to get done. You're going to need to decide, is it rent ready or not? And you might have some constraints around your budget as far how much you can do. Maybe you don't have the budget this time to paint and you're just going to be re-renting it as is, just making sure it's clean and re-renting it. If it's rent ready, then you move on to the next step. You do cleaning. If renovations are needed, then you can use a renovation plan form. And then you want to be booking viewing appointments. So you want to ask the tenant if there's convenient times for them. If they're refusing and you need to give notice, then you would give the 24-hour notice. And I think in BC you can give it up to 30 days in advance, so you could plan out all of your viewings when it's convenient for you. And depends on your availability. But business hours are the best. If somebody's motivated to come and rent your place, they're going to come and look at it. Prospect tenants want to see units in person, especially with all the scams going on out there. They want to come and see it, and they're going to take the time, take a day off work or take some time off if they're actually motivated to rent your place. So during business hours is ideal. You want to then see what the market rent is. There's a rental comparison form you can use. So there's lots of forms in this resource, right? So, you just kind of work your way through to find out what your place would rent for, comparable bedrooms and finish and part of town and all that kind of stuff to see what else is out there. And then you want to make a compelling ad copy, if it's newly renovated, you could say something like sleep with me the first time, or, moving to Mexico, got to rent my place, or just something in the headlines to catch attention. Really good photos and videos are important in this day and age, more so than a headline. That's more of a strategy back when there was newspaper ads and maybe listings on Craigslist or whatever, where there wasn't a ton of pictures readily available. These are the 3 M's of marketing. So you want to make sure that you're advertising in areas that your target tenant is going to be. What works really well in my local market right now is Facebook. A lot of the Facebook groups you can post in, whatever it is, Kamloops for rent or even the Kamloops buy and sell. And I like the Facebook groups that have large numbers, 40,000 people or whatever, because then you're going to get more exposure. But I've used Kijiji, Craigslist, some of the paid ad services as well. And you'll find different platforms will attract different tenants. Facebook's great for local people moving around, and a lot of people are on Facebook searching from out of town as well. But I get a lot of people from like Greater Vancouver that used to contact me from my ads on Craigslist. And the other thing you can do is just run a search on any search engine and see what are the top 3 results. So you would say your town, for rent, and whatever the top 3 results are, you want to try listing on those pages. You don't have to spend a ton of money on ads. If you can spend a little bit of time every day, you can refresh your ads for the various websites. I've done flyers, I've done open houses where you have a big sign, open house, and set up a table with, it depends on how hot or cold your rental market is, on how aggressive you want to be advertising, because you want to fill those units pretty quick. So there's different things that you can do. I don't know what this is. Oh yeah, so this is just an example of some rental signs that I've put up to try and get attention. And you can do bandit signs or posters or whatever. And then you want to make sure that you have a good headline, good ad copy, and you want to be promoting it constantly everywhere. And sometimes you get a referral from the tenant who's moving out, maybe one of their friends. If they were a good tenant, then chances are that their friends are going to be good. Or you can ask, your own friends or whatever. Sometimes it's a little bit awkward if you're a landlord and you're renting to people or family. If things don't go well, then you got to make business decisions that could be difficult, cause difficulty with your personal life. So it's nice to be somewhat outside of your immediate circle of influence when you're doing this. So you should have a lot of leads. If you're not getting any calls, you're not advertising enough, or you're way overpriced. If you're getting way too many calls, phone calls or texts or whatever, then it's too cheap and you want to be raising your rent. Then you want to get people on the phone, people who are calling you, they're looking for a place right now, and they want immediate response. It's just like any of us when we go shopping. You're not going to wait around for a day or two. You're going to be messaging, 20 different places, and whoever is the most responsive to get you a viewing of anywhere you're looking for, that's what you're going to look at first, and that's the highest likelihood of renting. So you need to, whoever's doing your leasing and answering the phones from the ads, they need to be on it and answering those, and checking very frequently all the time. So leasing agents are very busy. They're worth their money, and if it's you doing it, then you got to be super responsive during those vacant times. So I'm not going to read every slide. You want to filter your leads into prospects and suspects. So you can use this form to, as a script, right? And you add in some, they're all open-ended questions, and then you can make a time. Just make a time up that's kind of inconvenient for most people. I'm showing it, at 7 in the morning. I'm showing it at night, and then if they say, "Oh yeah, I can make it," they're motivated to see the place because it's an inconvenient time. That, so that's a valuable piece of information for you if it comes time to be negotiating the price of rent or whatever. And then you can always say, "Well, sorry, I've just looked at my calendar. Actually, that's not going to work for me." And then you can set a time that's more convenient for yourself. But anyway, there's a script that you can use. So you want to identify prospects of who could potentially be a good tenant, and then you want to eliminate suspects. So in Canada, you can't discriminate for various reasons under the human rights legislation. So your ad, or you can't say no kids, no children, no you can't discriminate based on sexual orientation or gender or race or any of these things. So but you can choose to do business with somebody who has an income or who doesn't. So you don't need to be extending credit to people, but the source of income you can't discriminate at. So even saying you must be working, well, if they have a disability pension, they're not working, you can't discriminate against them. So you got to be careful here because there's huge penalties and sanctions from the Human Rights Tribunal. So if you've talked to a few people and you've picked one and you decide to rent to them, if other people are reaching out, usually they find another place. But if they reach out and say, "Hey, how come you didn't give it to me?" You don't have to answer that. Maybe you're setting yourself up for some problems. All you say is, I rented to somebody else, and just leave it at that. You don't owe anybody an explanation. You don't need to be giving ammunition to anybody to say that you were discriminating against them. And that's just one of the joys of working in Canada. So you do pre-application, quick check. Ideally, they give you, their previous landlords. They tell you where they work. So you can just call HR and ask and confirm they work there. You can call the previous landlords. Yeah, they were good. They paid rent on time. They left the place clean. Ideally, you're talking to more than just the one they're moving out of, because if they're a bad tenant, that landlord might lie to you just to try and get them out. Tenants will give, or prospects or suspects will give the number of a friend and tell them, hey, somebody's going to call and ask you how it was, pretend to be my landlord. So, when on their rental application, they're going to say, yeah, I rented there from, December to December, from December to January in 2025. So then when you're calling the previous landlords, I understand that so-and-so rented from you for the last 6 months. And then if they say yes, well, then that means that they didn't, you can catch them with some false information. And if they don't correct you on some of these things, okay, when the rent was $2,000 a month, and if they just agree with you and it says on the rental form it was something different, well, now you've got somebody that's just going to give you a false reference. I do credit checks. I think it's important. Of course, tenants aren't necessarily going to have great credit. Sometimes it's a little bit low, and it's not indicative. People are going to pay their housing pretty high up on the list. So, if they've got a few, late payments on phone bills or whatever, sometimes it's not great, but it's acceptable depending on the strength of your rental market. You're going to change how stringent you are, but the more squeaky clean somebody is, the easier they are to deal with, and the more chance are they'll be compliant with your rules in your property because they're compliant with the rest of society's rules, and they're just easier to deal with. But you need a certain quality of property at a certain price point to attract the best people. So when people come in, I like to book my viewings back to back. I like people to sign in when they come so I can remember who came to look. So they sign in, and and a lot of times they'll be doing viewings, and the person that's moving out is still living there, right? And that's actually the ideal time to take photographs, and you're allowed to do that. You just can't take pictures of any personal identifying information, photos of them on the wall or their family on the wall or whatever. But when a unit is filled with somebody's stuff and furniture, it's like it's a staged property. So you can get some good photos for future advertising in that way, especially if they're a great person and say they make a good income and they've got nice furnishings. They probably have that property set up better than you could if you spent the time and effort to get all the furniture to stage it yourself. So just a little tidbit there. And then, I get people to sign in and take off their shoes at the door, just like you would at an open house if you're selling a property. You can be as aggressive or as simple as you want when you're showing these things. And a lot of it depends on your strength of the real estate market, the rental market. And I've had very competitive rental markets where I've had to pull out all the stops, where I'm doing big, huge open houses with, balloons and signs and pens and drinks and all that kind of stuff. And then I try and get people to fill out that application form with me on the spot. And it's actually useful if you or your leasing agent, instead of handing them a form and they go off and you never hear from them again, you fill out that application form with them if you like them. And based on the information on there, you can give them a tentative approval right on the spot. And sometimes they'll even, if it's a hot rental market, they'll even have money with them, or they'll e-transfer you right away for the security deposit or first month's rent. So if you've got a bunch of applications, that's great. If not, then go back to the previous step. And then you're going to conditionally accept them. Say they look great on paper, application's good. You're not going to stop advertising the property until they sign and pay you the money. Because I can't tell you how many times I've had people sign, say they're going to move in, they don't pay the money, and then they jam out on you. They ghost you, whatever the case may be. Good luck finding them to collect the rent for the rental agreement they signed, even if they signed a 1-year lease. It's going to be, it's difficult to chase people down. And now if you've stopped your marketing efforts, you're going to be empty an extra month. We have verification services that you can pay to do credit checks and criminal record checks. You can kind of get a sense from when you met them, look at their car, the cleanliness level, Are they covered in gang tattoos, or, do they appear to be, engaged in criminal activity, that kind of thing. Just going to blast through the rest of this. So then you accept, you sign, you accept money. Now they're your tenant. Okay. And then when they move in, I don't give them the keys until you get all the money. I've been in that situation before. They don't get possession. If you want to do a really nice touch, you make a welcome basket, and you include stuff that you need when you move in: toilet paper, a little bit of cleaning supplies, like a little box of candy that says moving survival kit, all these little things just set the tenancy off on the right foot. And then, put a reminder in your calendar for when it's going to come up for renewal, so you can get ahead of it and say, hey, look, you've been a great tenant. The rental increase is supposed to be $50 this year, but you've been so good that I'll give you a rebate of $25 if you stay signed for another year. Whatever the case may be. I mean, you're going to have to know what your market rent is in your, for your type of property, so you know how aggressive you want to be on your pricing and where you are in the rent. If you know that you're at the beginning of the boom and rents are going to continue to go up, you want to be a little bit more aggressive. And maybe it's okay if that tenant moves out, because you can get a lot higher rent on the exchange of tenant. Like in BC, that's the only way to do it. We have rent control, so you get 2 or 3% rental increase per year, and it's when a tenant moves out. Say they've been in there a long time and the rent is double what the market rate should be. Well, them moving out is actually a really great thing, because now your revenue is going to be a lot higher and your property goes a lot higher. So this is a really important point. This can be an aggravating process dealing with people, especially if they wreck your place or, whatever the case may be. 1 in 10 tenants can cause problems, and you just pull your hair out dealing with them. But this quote is just something that has really stuck with me. So maybe it'll stick with you too. So I'll just read it out. Your tenant is a partner in business who will open up shop each morning and lock it up at night. They will look after security and inform you of potential problems in the business. They will cut the grass, rake the leaves, shovel the snow, and pay all the utilities. They'll even pay all of your mortgage payments and taxes. Then at the end, they will relinquish all monetary interest in the business and walk away, leaving you with the profits. So whether it's you or it's a leasing agent, somebody needs to be doing this job, and they need to be doing it very well for you to have a profitable real estate business. And this applies to any property, whether you are living in a place that you're renting and you're renting out some spare rooms for some extra income or to share the cost, or maybe you're renting the rooms for enough that you can live for free, or you're renting your basement suite in your own home, or you're renting a property across town, or you're renting a 50-unit apartment building. Somebody needs to be very good at this job, and you'll get good at it with practice. And it's one of the skills, one of the talents that you can develop that makes you valuable to other real estate investors. So that's about that. I did want to share the tenancy agreement that I use. This is not the one that's provided by the government, the rental board. This is a different agreement that is a lot more. The government provided rental agreement. They say it's balanced, but it's really very one-sided towards the tenant, whereas the act, the law actually allows for a lot of things that are not on that rental agreement. For instance, if they move without providing proper notice, then you can get something called liquidated damages, right? So there's a clause here about liquidated damages, and that can be whatever it costs to re-rent the place, and that can come out of their security deposit, or you can get a judgment where they owe you, and that typically needs to be a number of what it costs to fill a unit, because somebody's going to be spending 5 hours or whatever the case may be, 10 hours, whatever, fixing stuff, showing the unit, and getting the new tenant in there, right? So that there's lots of clauses in here that protect the landlord as much as possible, and then you can add addendums with different rules and regulations. So and I ask my tenants to get tenant insurance. I try to make it easy for them by having a couple of companies that they can look at to talk to. and that's about it. So yeah, you want to have good people and good paperwork, and then eventually after a few years you're going to be owning that property, and can be great. So that's it for now. Went a little bit long, and I'll see you of course. Okay, thank you everybody. Peace.